Welcome back to the magical and mystical.
And wonderful.
Yes, and wonderful adventures of Gordon. Gordon's cinematic experience. Now I hope that you are all good, well, and fantastically marvelous old chaps. So you've come to join me yet again in visiting the magical and mystical.
And wonderful.
Yes, and wonderful adventures of Gordon. If you want to know more, please start with the first story of our series, Nannan's Quilt, followed by Gordon and the Land of the Domes. But if you want to stay, you're more than welcome. Let's begin our tale. Again, imagine, if you will, a house on the top of a hill surrounded by lush green landscapes and forests. This is where our Gordon, or Gordy as I like to call him, lives. He lives with his mother Mildred and sister Polly. Today was like any other Saturday. Gordon was yet again doing the absolutely most favourite activity, well, if you can call it that, in the entire world. Sleeping, of course. His mother Mildred had tried multiple tactics to pry him out and get him away from the cave quilt he made for his mini-hibernation, but alas, her attempts were in vain, so she often asked Polly to get him up and ready to go. Now, Polly was a frantic child and quite the opposite to our little bro. She liked to get up early, play in the dirt, and play anything and everything she could. Now, Polly had to change her tactics to get Gordon out of bed, as when she attempted before, it always resulted in violence. So she had learned to keep a distance and do it stealthily. So little Polly waited patiently, sat on her bed, twiddling her little thumbs, and then she heard what she always hears on a Saturday morning.
Polly?
The moment the sound touched her sensitive little ears, she shot up and ran down the corridor, past Gordon's room, and straight into Mildred's, her mother's room.
Polly, do me a favour and wake Gordon up. I've been shouting him for an hour and I'm trying to get ready. Okay, Mum.
Polly turned and walked into the hallway. How could she get him out of bed without getting too close to him? She needed to conjure up some creative solution, but what? She looked around as the little cogs in her brain began to turn, and then, yes, that was it! She stealthily but quickly dashed downstairs and looked into the living room, but was quickly deterred when she didn't find what she was looking for, so headed to the kitchen.
Ah, yes!
She had found what she was looking for. Sat on the top of one of the kitchen table chairs was Cookie, their little Jacksu dog. You'll probably remember her from episode 1. Her eyes move in alternate directions. They always think that little Cookie can see into another dimension. But anyway, on with the story. A grin widened Polly's face as she advanced on Cookie and scooped her up in her arms like a little baby.
Sprats,
Cookie's ears pricked up and her tail started to wag as her eyes darted all over the place. Polly walked with Cookie cradled in her arms over to the kitchen counter and plonked her down. Cookie sat to attention and waved a paw at Polly. Polly then reached for one of the top cupboards and produced a packet that said Sprats 100% natural. Cookie's tail started to wag vigorously. Polly opened the bag and was hit by a wave of odor. Odeur le fish. Lovely. The little sprat treats stank.
Now then, I think 3 should do the trick. Then I haven't got long until lift-off.
She was about to ask Cookie for a paw when Cookie beat her to it and produced multiple. Polly fed Cookie the sprats and scooped her up, rushing upstairs and outside of Gordon's room. She then placed little Cookie on the floor and said,
Cookie, Gordon snuggles.
The little Jackson dog knew exactly what to do and pushed Gordon's door open with her little nose, jumped on the bed and ventured into the cave quilt where Gordon was slumbering. Now Cookie loved to snuggle, and today was no exception, so she rubbed up against our little bro Gordon and laid next to him. Oh, how cute! For a moment I want to take you into the land of Nod, into our little Gordon's dream, as he was having quite a wonderful one, where he was a knight rescuing a princess, and they were crossing a field hand in hand when Gordon stood still in his dream and turned to the princess.
Can you smell fart? Ah, it stinks. Who's farted? Yuck. It's too much.
Now let me whisk you back to reality. In reality, the smell was coming from Cookie's little bottom. It was an ungodly smell that only occurred when Cookie ate sprats. Oh my goodness, she had let out the biggest fart for a little dog that you have ever heard. Our little Gordon's nostrils flared, and the stench almost stinged his nose hairs. It was enough to peel the wallpaper off. Needless to say, our little bro woke up and realized what had happened, so he shot out of bed, grabbed his clothes, and exited the room.
Oh, what a rotten trick, Cookie. Now my room needs to be quarantined all day. Boy, reeks. Cookie, you've got a serious problem.
Little Polly was behind her bedroom door, chuckling away to herself and happy with a mission accomplished. Gordon went into the bathroom to wash and change, making sure to blow his nose and gargle with some mouthwash to get rid of the horrendous fart smell. As he was gargling, Mildred shouted,
Gordon, breakfast!
It was like a sonic boom through the bathroom door as Gordon opened it and went to the kitchen to get some of his absolutely favorite cereal. And so he sat, munching and crunching away whilst contemplating the mysteries of our vast universe. Comfortably in his daydream, chomping away on his cereal, Gordon could have stayed in this state for hours if it hadn't been for his mother, Mildred, alerting him to attention.
Gordon, I'm going to pop to Nannan's. You'll be okay with Polly, won't you? Yeah, I'll make sure she's okay. Thank you.
And with that, Mildred snatched the keys from the bowl that resided at the side of the door and went to Nannan's. The house became silent as Gordon contemplated going back to bed, but realized the cookie stench would still probably be quite strong, so he decided against it. He had a free day to do whatever he pleased and couldn't decide what to do. He could play on a video game. That probably involved the stench, so that was out of the question as his games console was in his room. What to do? Whilst he was thinking about what to do, he heard the phone ring and knew what that meant. It was time to race. You see, Polly and Gordon would compete to answer the phone every time without fail that it rang. Polly was already on the move, and now so was Gordon. Gordon was coming on the inside, and Polly was on the other side. And they both made a mad dash for the living room quick, and Gordon got there first and slid along the carpet with Polly a close second. He picked the phone up and held it to his ear.
Hello?
Hi, God, it's me, Weezer. You and Polly fancy coming to the cinema with me and Ian?
Do we? Let me think about that for a second. Course we do.
Well, we have tickets to this new cinema that's opened and it's not far from your house. So get your coat on and your shoes. We'll be there in, say, 5 minutes.
God turned to Polly and smiled.
What? We're going to the cinema with Weezer and Ian.
You didn't even ask whether I wanted to go or not.
Well, do you?
Yeah, duh.
You're a diddly derp. Get your shoes on. They're on the way.
Again another competition, a race to get ready ensued, and the pair did their best to beat each other at getting their coat and shoes on. So after their race, which Polly won, by the way, they stood suited and booted, ready to go. Waiting in eager anticipation, they heard their favourite sound, Ian's car. They were here at last, so Gord and Polly opened the door and dashed to Ian's mini off-road car. Gordon called it the Silver Surfer. Pretty self-explanatory, really, as the car was silver, but anyway. They leapt into the car with excitement and buckled their seatbelts. Ian pressed his foot on the accelerator pedal and the little 4x4 shot off down the country lane.
Which cinema is it, Ian?
Well, I've got this friend who said there's this new cinematic experience thingy. I don't really know, but with it being cinema, you know, we love the cinema. And it's meant to be this proper, like, immersive thing. And they said they needed a test audience to watch it and give feedback, so I obviously volunteered our services. Apparently, the seats move, water sprays, smells come out of the film, you know, like what's on the screen, the smell comes out and hits your face. There's all sorts.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
I think it's going to be a real treat. Well, we have to be there for 1 o'clock. We're the first group in.
Oh, I can't wait. And what are we watching?
It's some kind of Wild West film. I'm not really sure, but it'll be cool, I reckon.
Better than a boring Saturday where Cookie farts in your room and you daren't go in.
God. Oh, Gordon, you do make us laugh. Ah, well, we'll take it as a job well done. You were up and ready, so it's a positive. Thanks, Cookie's rump.
The group chuckled again and tried to make a positive out of a negative as much as they possibly could.
Are we there yet?
Nearly, Polly. I've had to take this sat-nav because I've never been here before, so it's taking a little while.
They drove on for another 20 minutes, and then the sat-nav showed a little flag signifying their destination was close, and then it said, "You have reached your destination. Initiate docking." So they pulled up to what looked like an old church-style building. It definitely gave out some creepy vibes. Getting out of the car, they all ventured to the big wooden doors in the front, and with a monumental effort heaved them open. Entering the building gave them all the creeps, but they were excited to have a cinematic experience. So, in front of them was a huge red arrow with the word cinema written on it.
Well, guys, I think it's pretty straightforward. Let's just follow the arrows and get into our seats and get ready to be dazzled.
Following the many arrows through various corridors and down staircases, it took them deeper into the labyrinth of a church. Finally, they reached another wooden door with the label Cinema on it and pushed the door open. What they held in front of them was a complete shock. The building decor in the other parts of the church was quite ancient and looked from a time gone by, but this room looked super modern with plush colours, carpets, and bigger than usual cinema seats. Smiles widened each of their faces as they rushed in to grab their seats. The screen was a decent size and the lighting was low, and oh, look at that on their seats. There was a mini bucket of popcorn, which of course got devoured in about a minute, and then they all sat down. Apart from their piggish eating noises,
Pass me popcorn.
Yeah. Ooh, ah.
Oh, that's lovely.
excuse me, apart from their piggish eating noises, the small cinema was deadly quiet. You could have heard a mouse fart across the street. It was that quiet. Eagerly anticipating the film, they all chit-chatted away until suddenly the screen lit up and the film began. Oh, the chairs began vibrating as a cowboy rode his horse onto the screen. Our gang were beginning the immersive experience and wanted more. Then, all of a sudden, the cowboy rode into town and a foul stench crossed the guy's nostrils.
Whoa, the Wild West stinks.
Still not as bad as Cookie's farts, though.
The group chuckled. As the film went on and introduced the main character, Gordon, your little bladder. Oh my, Gordon needed to pee.
I'll be back in a minute, guys. I've got to visit the little boy's room.
He stealthily slunk away to look for a toilet. Clasping at his crotch, he really needed to pee. He searched high and he searched low with no luck at all. He was trying to tie a knot in it the best he could, but he felt as though he might burst. Becoming quite frantic, he opened different rooms and finally waltzed into the projection room. As in any projector room, there is a huge projector playing the film, and of course, like a moth to the flame, Gordon had to go up to it and inspect it. It was extremely dusty and dirty and had an emblem on the side that God couldn't make out but was curious as to what it would say, so he took his handkerchief out of his pocket. Now, this wasn't any old hanky. It was one Ian bought him 3 birthdays ago, and it had his name on it. He took it everywhere for good luck. He advanced closer to the machine and was planning to rub the dirt off of the emblem. And now for one of my favorite sayings. Meanwhile, in the cinema, the other guys were really getting into the film when all of a sudden a flash, much like a lightning flash, flashed, and they all blinked. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Up there, on the big screen, it was Gordon.
What? Why? How? He only went to the toilet. Is this some kind of trick or something?
I don't know, but I don't like it.
All of a sudden, the Gordon on the screen turned to the gang.
Help! Where am I?
Then one of the villain characters rode their horse fast towards Gordon and scooped him up, riding into the distance.
What the heck is going on?
Come on, let's go and try to retrace Gordon's steps. There'll be a logical explanation for this, although it is a whole new level of weird.
Ian, Polly, and Weezer sprang from their seats and went on the hunt for Gordon.
How did he get onto the cinema screen? It must be some kind of immersive experience trick or something. I don't know. Come on, let's retrace his steps and see if we can figure out what's going on.
They tried their best to find out where Gordon had gone, but there were no clues at all. Finally, they reached the projector room and began searching.
Look, guys, it's Gordon's handkerchief. I can tell because it's got his name on it. It was the one that Ian bought him for his birthday.
Well spotted, Polly.
Ian picked up the handkerchief and noticed it had a little dirt on it. Looking and pondering why the handkerchief was there, Ian spotted the weird projector's emblem. It was still encrusted in dirt, but looked like someone had tried to rub it off. So Ian, putting two and two together, put the handkerchief up to polish the dirt off and simply vanished. Weiser and Polly's mouths dropped wide open. They couldn't believe Ian had vanished. Thinking fast, they went to the little viewing window to look in on the filmed screen, and lo and behold, Ian was stood in the middle of an old Wild West town. Now, I'll tell you this, he looked quite out of place in his modern clothing, but he was there on the cinema screen nonetheless. Weiser and Polly decided they would follow Gordon and Ian's lead and picked up the handkerchief and polished the emblem too, and they were teleported into the film with Ian. Oh, what next? Taking in their surroundings, they couldn't believe where they were. The sights, the people, the smells, everything whiffed. They were stirring up quite a crowd of people, so they decided to hide and regroup to make a plan of action. They all scurried around one of the wooden buildings and caught their breath.
Right, we obviously stick out like a sore thumb, so first port of call should be to blend in somehow. I think we need some disguisers, guys, but from where?
Well, we are in a film, so let's either look for a washing line to borrow some clothes, or go to a clothes shop and trade something.
Let's try the clothes shop. We don't want to gather any more attention, eh?
So the adventurers tried their best to be stealthy and slunk into the clothes shop. Approaching the counter, they were met by a slick gentleman who was quite thin and had a moustache, and he was reading a newspaper. Polly rang the little bell on the counter. The man lowered his newspaper and focused on the customers in front of him and smiled very widely and said,
My first customers of the day, and with such bizarre clothing. What, may I ask, can I do for you?
Well, we need 3 outfits, so can we trade something for them?
Why, of course. I can tell you what I'll do. I will do a simple swap. My clothes for the ones you're wearing. Do we have a deal?
Yeah, no problem.
The man scurried around his shop, plucking various garments up as he went along, and then passed the 3 of them the clothes.
Please use my back room and change out of your clothes into these and leave them in there. Perfect swap. Deal?
Ian shook his hand, and they went into the back room and got changed. They looked like cowboys and cowgirls, minus the guns, of course. Leaving their clothes, they walked out of the shop and into the small town. People didn't pay them much attention now, so it proved that the disguisers had worked.
Where do we go from here?
Well, thinking back to the westerns I've seen, the best place for information is usually the saloon or a bar or something, so let's head there.
They looked around and didn't really know where to go, so Ian thought he would ask one of the locals.
Excuse me, partner. We're new in town and are thirsty from our travels. Where could we find a drink?
That was his best impression. Oh, it was terrible. The little old man Ian spoke to raised his arm and pointed down the far side of the town.
Thank you, sir,
Ian said in his absolutely diabolical accent. Oh, I'm so embarrassed for him. They walked in the direction the little man told them to go in hopes of finding the saloon.
I can see it. It's there, look.
Well spotted, Polly.
They walked up to the saloon and opened the door to be greeted by a warning message.
No women or children in here, Sonny Jim. Out they go. Wait outside. Okay, sir. I'll just take my family outside.
Oh, that accent, it's grating on my brain. I don't know about you, but oh my goodness, if that's his best efforts. Oh, dear me. Anyway, Ian went outside with Weezer and Polly and said,
Weesh, you're going to have to wait out here with Polly. They obviously don't let women and children inside, so just stop here while I try and get some information out of them, okay?
Ian went back inside, leaving Weezer and Polly waiting in the blistering heat. The saloon was full of filthy-looking men who didn't pay Ian much attention. They just cradled their drinks and drank their day away. Walking up to the bar, Ian was about to talk to the bartender when a man at the other end of the bar interrupted him.
Whiskey now, barkeep.
The bartender looked petrified and quickly served the man with the whiskey. The man grabbed the glass and walked uncomfortably close to Ian. You could smell the booze on his breath. It smelled like he'd been drinking for quite some time. Leaning close to Ian's ear, he started to whisper.
New in town, hmm? Well, let me introduce myself. I am Bill Tate's partner to MacDonald, who owns this town, and I tell you this, wherever you decide to lay your head will be where we come a-looking to collect our rent. You know, for your protection and all.
I don't need any protection.
I don't need any protection.
Oh, now, dear sir, of course you do. Everyone pays the price.
I'm fine, thanks. I'm fine, thanks.
You're obviously not hearing what I am saying now, are you? Do I have to make myself clear?
Well, sir, it would seem you do.
Bill didn't like Ian's answer and raised his hand, signalling a rather large man who was sat at the other end of the saloon. The man begrudgingly got up from his seat and, like a bear on two legs, shuffled over. Bill started to speak again.
Now then, son, I'm gonna ask you one more time, real nice-like. You'll pay the price when it comes a-knocking, won't you?
Ian looked at the towering man and took a deep breath, pretending he was about to cave in, but that wasn't Ian's style at all. Moments passed, and Bill became impatient, so signaled for the giant of a man to take care of business, a.k.a. Ian. The giant man clenched his fist and raised it above his head as if he was going to clonk Ian on the head and brought his huge arm down with a vengeance. Ian, in one swift move, grabbed Bill and pulled him close, and they wobbled backwards. Simultaneously, the giant man was bringing down his huge fist, and instead of hitting Ian, he clonked Bill on the head, which knocked him out, and Ian stumbled backwards. The large man was quite distraught, and in a real panic he had just effectively knocked out his boss. Whilst in a flap and with no time for messing around, Ian threw a power punch at the giant of a man, which sent him flying into a seat behind him. The two were now out cold. The bartender hurried over to Ian.
"Oh, gosh, I don't think you know what you've done, sir. You're a dead man for sure."
The saloon was silent as Ian quickly quizzed the bartender.
Look, I don't mean to cause any trouble, but all we want to do is find my little brother. He came into this town, but a mysterious rider scooped him up and carried him off. We just want to get him back, that's all.
"Well, you've messed with the wrong ones here, sir. These two are part of a band of misfit cowboys, led by an absolute lunatic named MacDonald. He collects children and puts them to work down the mines. Now listen, that's all I can tell you, that is it. And you better make yourself scarce, mister, please. I don't want to get into any trouble."
Ian didn't waste another moment. He took the hint and rushed out of the saloon, filled Polly and Weezer in, and they all headed out of town to make some distance between the henchmen before they came looking for them and enacted their revenge. As they neared the city limits, they noticed a wagon with 2 horses attached.
Look, guys, let's get inside this wagon and cover ourselves up with a sheet or something. Get on the back, Polly. Weezer, come on. That way we can have a little rest, evade detection, and I don't know. Let's just do it, and before the owners come back.
All 3 of them jumped in and laid down and instantly regretted it as they were laid next to coffins.
I hope these are empty.
Who knows, but let's just rest here for a moment.
Then voices were heard.
"Now then, Billy Bob, you take these coffins to the next town over in Anchorage and get me a fine price, you hear?"
Yes, Dad.
The gang were on their way out of town and towards the next one, but who knows how long it would take to get there. Night drew in as the wagon had been on the road for a few hours. The man driving stopped, and the guys guessed he was setting up camp for the night, but they heard other voices.
Whoa there, partner. Where are you going?
"I'm going to Anchorage to try and sell Pa's coffins."
Listen here. We're looking... Give me that drink. We're looking for a man who hit me. Well, hit us, and run from the saloon in MacDonald's territory. If you have any information, you let us know, you hear?
Ian, Weezer, and Polly were stunned and couldn't believe it was the henchman Bill Tate's looking for Ian.
"Quick, guys. Get in the coffins."
They each jumped into the coffins and listened to the conversation further.
Oh, that's the good stuff. You and your pa have been late on your payments, and I can tell you MacDonald ain't gonna be happy about that.
"I'm so sorry, Mr. Bill."
If you want to stay above ground and out of those coffins, I suggest you keep up to date with your payments, you hear, you son of a...
"Yes, sir. I'm so sorry, sir. Once I deliver these coffins to Anchorage, I will be back with your payment. I'm so sorry."
You make sure you are, or there'll be hell to pay.
And with that, the riders turned and disappeared into the darkness. Phew, thank goodness they didn't check the coffins. The gang all took a deep breath and were so thankful that Bill and his rough and tumble bandits didn't detect them at all. After their hearts had stopped racing, the gentle rocking of the cart sent them nodding to sleep. Time passed, and our weary coffin cart riders slept through the night and were startled awake by the abrupt halt of the cart.
They must have been travelling through the night.
Jolting awake, they decided to get out of the coffins. The moment they opened the coffins, they were met by the face of the young man who drove the cart. His face was a picture as he ran shouting for help. The rate he was screaming, the whole town would be woken up, so the gang decided to get out and hide until the dust settled. Our 3 adventurers ran on to what looked like a farm and decided to regroup in the stables until all the drama stopped. As they entered the stables, they were greeted by a huge black stallion horse. Oh, my, it was a beauty. Look at its rippling muscles. Wow! You could see every striation and vein. Wow, what a strong horse. Sorry, I'm getting carried away. On with the story. Weezer had an affinity with all animals, and she held her hand out, to which the stallion shoved its nose into Weezer's palm. They listened for any more commotion, but the shouting had stopped. Thank goodness, as he was getting quite annoying.
Right, we have to work with the info that we have.
And what's that?
Well, the bartender at the last town said all the young kids with no families, they get taken by this MacDonald character to the mines and mine resources for him to sell or use or something. I don't know. It's the same old scam, isn't it? You know, money men make profits off other people's misery. They just don't care.
Well?
And at that moment, the stable door burst open, revealing a very angry-looking cowboy with a huge shotgun now focused on our 3 adventurers. Oh, was this it? Was this their doom? No, of course it wasn't, because there's plenty more story to go. I can see it right here on what I'm reading. Oh, anyway, a voice bellowed from the farmer.
Why are you on my property? I strongly suggest you move before I'm forced to use my gun and call the sheriff. Please, sir, we're sorry. We're trying to seek shelter. Don't lie to me, son. I saw you 3 dashing from that coffin cart and that young man screaming his head off.
Look, okay, I'll level with you. We're on the run from Bill. You know that Bill Tate's guy? I got into a fight and punched him out in the last town, and we hid. We hid in those carts to escape. All we want is to find our little bro, Gordon. Apparently, he's at this McDonald's slave factory mine or something, and we just want him back.
You hit Bill, you say?
Yeah. Why?
A smile widened on the farmer's face as he lowered his gun.
Anyone who doesn't like that MacDonald guy or that Bill is welcome here. Please come on and have a glass of raw milk and some honey, and we can have a chat.
The farmer slung his gun over his shoulder and headed for the main house. The guys looked at each other and shrugged, and then they took a deep breath. And the 3 followed the farmer into his house, opening the big wooden door. His home was very warm, and he welcomed the weary adventurers inside.
Come on in. My wife Hilda will make you some of our raw, fresh milk and a spoonful of our local honey.
They all sat down as the man stoked the fire. The house was very, very warm and cozy. I find natural fires to be quite cozy, don't you? Anyway.
Now then, sir, You tell me about this encounter with Bill you had. I want to know absolutely everything. Do not leave out one single thing. I want to enjoy this.
Ian regaled his tale, and the moment he told the farmer he fended off Bill and the gang, the farmer smiled and laughed, and so did Hilda, his wife. The milk was absolutely delicious, and honey, oh, a perfect accompaniment. Perfect for a pick-me-up.
Now then, you said your brother was sent to the mines?
Yeah, do you know anything?
Well, if you wished, I can show you the way to those mines. But you won't get close, as MacDonald has invented something to keep unwanted visitors away. There's guards on the trail. I don't know how you would get past. It's only the guards and prisoners that go on in.
Sir, if you could show us the way, that would be absolutely amazing, and we would be eternally grateful.
It's no problem, son. I can take you out there this afternoon, but first I have my chores to see to.
We can help, no problem.
They all got to work, shoveling, sweeping, milking cows, and the like. After a few hours, when everything was done, the farmer saddled up multiple horses, and they were on their way. Oh, I do love a Wild West showdown, and our family are certainly matching up to be the rootin' tootin' cowboys. Yee-haw-haw! Oh, boy! Sorry, I have to learn not to get so involved, but I love these guys so much. I know I get carried away. Now, let's take a breath. Listen. Through the nose. Into the diaphragm. And release. So our trio were being guided by the farmer up a dirt road, which in the distance revealed a mountain. Who wrote this? What a description. Let me try. As our youthful 21st century time-travelling family rode their horses towards a picturesque mountain with snow on the top of its peak. Yes, that sounds a little better. They couldn't help but get a sinking feeling of apprehension in their stomachs. They were riding directly into the belly of the beast and didn't know whether they would be captured, killed, or made into slaves, but they had to rescue our Gordon. Nothing else mattered. The farmer held his hand high.
Well, it's been a pleasure knowing you folks, but this is the end of the line for me, I'm afraid. God bless you all.
And with that he tugged on the reins of his horse and did a 180-degree turn. He gradually vanished into the distance as our three adventurers were silently motionless, not knowing what to do.
Right, come on. We need to go on foot from here.
They all dismounted their horses and walked them over to a small pond by the side of the road.
Polly, I want you to stay here with the horses, and me and Weezer are going to go after Gordon.
But
No ifs, ands, or buts.
Polly screwed up her little face and marched over to the pond, immediately picking up a stone and throwing it in.
Listen, if we don't come back, you need to go to that village, back to the farmer, and get help, okay?
Ian took his watch off and gave it to Polly.
I'll try to give you a sign when it gets to about 6 o'clock, so keep your eyes peeled, okay?
but
What did I say? No ifs, ands, or especially buts, okay?
Polly took a deep breath.
okay.
Ian and Weezer turned and walked towards the mountain.
Don't you think it's pretty irresponsible of us to leave Polly there? Yeah, it is, but what choice do we have, really?
We're in a difficult spot, a difficult time, a difficult place, and walking into a difficult situation, and it could only be described as a nightmare. So why take Paul into it? Well, true.
They marched down the dirt road, and the landscape changed slightly. There were more trees, but they weren't as colourful or lush as the trees they had seen previously. They were all twisted and looked dry and devoid of life. It looked like a barren wasteland with nowhere to hide from prying eyes.
Well, we're going to have to think about our approach. Let's go around the mountain a little bit to evade detection, as these trees don't provide any cover at all, do they? No. They look like those weird crisps you used to be able to get, but I forget the name. They look terrible.
They arrived at the base of the side of the mountain and couldn't see the entrance to the mine at all, so decided to go a little further out of sight and went around. Ascending the steep mountain wasn't easy, and Ian and Wisa weren't exactly seasoned mountaineers. They only had experience of watching film stars and the like. This wasn't the same thing at all. It was very tiresome and took ages, and I mean ages. Oh, just to get to a decent height to where they could get a vantage point. Finally, the pair decided to stop and peer over towards the mine's entrance. It was deserted and pretty quiet, too, to be fair. The pair were extremely suspicious. Then, all of a sudden, a cow wandered down the path, seemingly coming from nowhere. It must have got lost and broken from its herd. It neared the mountain, and then it vanished.
Did you see that, or was it just me? Definitely saw it. The cow disappeared for sure. Cows don't just disappear. Nope. That was weird. Wait. Look.
The cow then reappeared and was running in the opposite direction to the mine.
I've never seen a disappearing and reappearing cow. I'd love to see that on that magic show where they show you how the tricks are done. Me neither. I've never seen anything like it.
The cow was moving at quite a fast pace, and then a man on a horse emerged from the same place as the cow and was in hot pursuit while swinging a lasso around his head.
He's after the cow, and they're both heading down the path at a blistering pace. Oh no. Polly!
Ian and Wisa looked at each other and couldn't believe how stupid it was to leave a little girl with 3 horses on her own at the side of the road. They started to descend the mountain and were making their way back to Polly. They managed to get back to the dirt road and found the trail to the pond where Polly was waiting, and they noticed fresh horse prints.
Wisa, what have we done? I bet they have her now.
As they got closer to the pond, they heard a man's voice, and Polly too. Trying to be stealthy, they rushed behind a large boulder and peered in on what was going on. Polly was talking to the unknown stranger.
My dad will be back soon, and he won't be happy with you.
Shut your little face. You don't know who you're talking to, do you? I'm one of McDonald's officers, and I have authority on this here land that you're trespassing on. So I'm going to take you with me, and either you come the easy way go or the hard way. It's your choice. Look, kid, it's been a long day, and the mine and McDonald's will reward me if I bring another cobalt kid.
A what?
A kid that goes down them damn mines and mines cobalt. We call them cobalt kids. So, come on, little missy.
I'm not going anywhere with you.
Okay then, the hard way it is.
Polly sprinted around the pond with the man in hot pursuit. She was in a flap, trying her best to get away, but there was nowhere to run. After about 5 minutes, the man stood still and stopped. He then placed his hand onto his gun and pulled out a long pistol and pointed it in the air, firing off a single shot. This made Polly freeze, petrified with fear. He then proceeded to point the pistol at her.
Now, I told you I don't want to have to do this the hard way.
He gestured with the gun for Polly to come to him. Unfortunately, she admitted defeat and had fear in her little eyes. As her eyes welled up with tears, she was trembling as she forced her quivering body to move towards the man. As she neared the man, she could see Iam's face appear from behind a boulder, and her heart partially slowed down with relief. Iam made a talking motion with his hand and pointed at the guard. Now Polly knew exactly what to do, as they had played silent games at home, and she knew Iam had a plan and wanted her to talk to the guard to distract him. So, being the little thespian that she is, she began putting on her acting head to create a winning performance.
Oh, please, Mr. Cowboy, I'm so sorry. I'll come with you, no problem. Please don't shoot me. Oh, I won't put up a fight. I'll come willingly. Here, you can put me in handcuffs.
Her acting was quite convincing. You can give her a little clap, if you will. As her eyes welled up with tears too. Oh, this girl's talents. They know no end. And the unknown man put his gun back into his holster and unclipped some handcuffs from his belt. Just as he neared little Polly's hands, his lights went out when Iam smacked him on the back of the head with a rock. They all gave each other a group hug.
Polly, we're really sorry for leaving you, but we didn't want you to get into trouble. We should have known better. We should have just taken you with us.
It's okay.
Then their conversation was cut short when they heard a voice coming from the unknown man's belt.
Winston, do you copy? Over.
The unknown man started to stir, and as soon as he did, Iam grabbed his gun and pointed it at him. As he opened his eyes, Iam, Weezer, and Polly came into focus.
Oh, what in the Sam hell do you think you're doing?
Iam smiled and said,
Well, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The choice is yours.
Cocking his head with a side smile, Iam then continued.
Not nice when the boot's on the other foot, is it?
The previously unknown man, which obviously, if you were listening from the radio on his belt, was called Winston, tilted his head like a dog trying to fathom out what was going on.
Listen, answer the radio call and tell them everything's fine and you'll be going to town and not back for a while. Tell them the stranger who hit Bill is there somewhere.
The stranger being Iam.
I ain't doing nothing of the sort.
Iam gave the gun to Weezer.
Weiss, shoot him if he tries anything.
Then Iam took the handcuffs and placed them onto Winston's hands.
You won't get away with this. MacDonald's gonna come and lock you up in the mine and make you work until you can't work no more.
Iam didn't answer Winston at all. He silently and as menacingly as possible walked over to Winston's horse and took the lasso rope. Can you remember he was lassoing the cow earlier? Well, he left a rope. Now Iam split it into two and tied each strand around Winston's feet. Then he pulled Winston over to a cactus tree and placed a rope at either side of the tree.
Polly, bring 2 of the horses.
Hey, what you planning, mister?
Ian didn't answer. He waited for the horses. He then tied one rope to one horse and the other rope to another. Meanwhile, the walkie-talkie started to crackle again.
Right, Winston, you have a choice. Tell your boss all is clear and you're going to go to town, or else I fire this gun in the air and these horses shoot off and your unmentionables meet Mr. Cactus. And, as my dad would say, you'll get to the point of the matter.
Winston was visibly distressed as sweat started trickling down his head and into his eyes.
Oh, please, mister, you don't understand. I can't. MacDonald will...
Time's wasting, and if you don't want to meet Mr. Cactus, you know what to do.
Okay, give me the walkie-talkie.
Ian smiled, and Winston spoke into the weird-looking walkie-talkie.
This is Winston here. I'm sorry I didn't reply. I was just chasing that cow. That varmint got away. Say, I've got a call from town saying that man that escaped and hit Mr. Bell is in the town, so I'm going to take a look, okay? No problem there, Winston. Do what you got to do, but be back by daylight tomorrow, okay?
The walkie-talkie went dead.
Now we've got a little time to plan things, and yes, Polly, you're coming along. We can't leave you here, so the best thing to do is take you with us and keep an eye on you.
Ian turned to Winston.
Right, what can we do with you? First, I want to know why or how you appeared out of thin air chasing a cow.
Still distressed, Winston yelled and started to spill the beans.
Well, sir, you see that my employer, Mr. MacDonald, he has what we call a technology that allows us to rule these lands, and he's mining for various special rocks and such to expand our territories. So to do that, he needs a workforce that's fit, small, healthy, can get into the deepest parts of the mines. So he takes children, he buys children to work for him. Obviously, he gives a fair price for some of them, but the others he takes, like the ones without parents, orphans they call them, and the barrier won't let anybody in without...
Ian smacked Winston upon the head.
I don't see the fairness or the humour in ripping little kids from their parents and forcing them into slave labour.
Winston squirmed and put his head down.
How do we get through this invisible barrier?
I was going to tell you. You didn't have to smack me on the head.
Ian smacked him again.
Oh, okay. Well, you have to have this special pass, and all of us have one.
Ian opened his hand. Winston shook his head.
No, please, don't, please.
Wisa then smacked him upside the head too.
Oh, okay.
Winston then reached up and pulled what looked like a key card from his pocket.
That lets you pass and gives you access to the mine, okay?
There's only one, so it looks like I'm going in. It's a solo mission on this one, guys.
Wait, no, you can't.
Can and am. You wait here with Polly, Wisa. Ian. It's okay. Look, listen, I'll bring God out, and then we can figure out how to get back home. Now, you...
Ian pointed to Winston.
Get undressed.
Winston gulped and got undressed. Ian put on his clothes, which were on the tight side for Ian, but they were going to have to do. He had got himself a disguise. He then muddied himself up, especially his face.
I'll try and keep out of the way, use this disguise, and I'll improvise and tell them I fell off my horse or something if they ask, but they might not even ask. Or tell them I'm new or something. I don't know. I'll just make it up on the spot.
After handcuffing Winston to a tree and then tying his feet up, Ian hugged Polly and kissed Wisa goodbye. He mounted the horse and put the keycard into his pocket. Taking a deep breath, he waved to the girls, and off he went into the belly of the beast. Ian's heart was pounding with anxiety as he drew closer to the invisible barrier. He didn't know what to expect. Oh, poor Ian, God, Polly, Wisa, they always seem to get into a problematic predicament. Oh, well, I hope they get out of it unscathed. Sorry, I'm getting carried away again. Back to the story. Ian had reached roughly where the cow had disappeared, and his horse took another step. Wow! The world around him, as if by magic, changed as he passed through the barrier. The moment he went through, he was startled for a moment as he took in his new surroundings. To his right and to his left, he saw 2 guard towers, each with a guard in it. Well, that's good, isn't it? If they're guard towers, they're going to have guards in them. Excellent writing, this, isn't it? Guard towers equals guards. Oh, dear, I'm so sorry. Focus. The 2 towers faced inwards towards the opening of the mine to where the children were pushing mining carts filled with boulders and emptying them onto the ground outside. At the side of the tracks there were mine carts, where there was another single guard who looked bigger than all the rest. He was keeping a close eye on the kids working. As Ian rode his horse in, he pulled the front of his cowboy hat down slightly, remembering this was a stealth mission. Now, if you don't know about Ian, but any game on the computer, I'm just doing this to fill you in, any game on the computer, he wasn't very good at stealth. Like, I don't know if you've played Metal Gear Solid or Hitman or something like that. Well, he wasn't very good at stealth and usually ran in all guns blazing, but on this occasion he had to keep his cool and do it stealthily. So, as he rode in on the horse, he could see that there were other horses at the side tied to posts near the mine's entrance, so he headed there to dismount and tie up his horse. Hopping off the horse, Ian tied the reins to the post and slowly turned, keeping an eye on the 3 guards. They didn't pay him much notice, to be fair. They didn't seem fazed at all by Ian and kept to their duties with expressions of boredom and fatigue. Ian was headed for the mine, and yes, just as he was about to get to the entrance, the big guard shouted him,
"Hey, Winston, get me some whiskey from the comms room, will you?"
Ian, thinking fast, raised his arm in acknowledgement and proceeded into the mine. Upon entering, he noticed whiskey barrels and bottles stacked very, very high up next to a small wooden hut. That must have been the comms room. Ian didn't pay much attention and went further into the mine, passing children who were clearing tunnels, hitting rocks, using pickaxes and loading rubble into the mining carts. Picking up the pace slightly, Ian kept his eye well and truly peeled for his little bro, Gordon. Oh, where is our Gordy? I want to see him. Sorry. He walked for what seemed like forever, and then he saw him. Oh, Gordon's alive! Oh, I wish I could just have Brian Blessed say it for me, but I've got to do it. Gordon's alive! I'm so excited. Our little bro, he was there. It was Gordon. Yes, he may have been covered in dirt and filth, but it was our Gordon. Oh, yes, he was helping another young lad load a big boulder into one of the mining carts. Ian waltzed over and grabbed Gordon by the arm and started pulling him back through the mine towards the entrance and towards the communication hut and towards freedom. Not giving Gordon a moment to speak, Ian opened the hut door and threw Gordon in. He was trying to act like a guard so the others wouldn't suspect a thing. The room was very small and poorly lit. Ian closed the door behind them, but failed to notice a guard sat with his back to Ian and Gordon. Naturally, the guard spun around and beamed a cold stare at the pair. Ian had tilted his head downwards slightly, still trying to go unnoticed. The guard started to speak.
Winston, is that you? I thought you were going to town or something.
Ian's brain was going at 1,000,000 miles per hour, trying to come up with some kind of solution or plan to the current problem. Knowing how Winston sounded, he tried to impersonate him.
I had to come back for some with a whiskey.
A grin widened on the guard's face.
Darn right, brother. Well, Godspeed to you, but what about this round?
He was obviously referring to Gordon. Ian thought fast.
I need somebody to carry me whiskey to my horse. The big man wants 2 bottles, so I need myself some spare hands. All right, well, safe trip, you hear?
And with that, Ian grabbed Gordon once again and roughly pushed him out of the door, to which the comms guard chuckled and spun back around to the console. Gordon hadn't realized it was Ian yet and got a big surprise when the guard, Ian, leant down to his ear and whispered,
Not the first time I've got you out of a sticky spot, is it, God? Ian. Shh. Don't blow my cover. Play along, and we'll be out of here in no time, okay?
Ian grabbed 2 bottles of whiskey and started walking towards the light with Gordon in hot pursuit. The moment he stepped into the light, the large guard's head rose up.
Hey, what's he doing following you?
Ian thought fast and launched a whiskey bottle in the guard's direction, and simultaneously mimicking Winston, he said,
I'm taking this one to MacDonald. He says he knows something about the unknown visitor.
The guard, more interested in the whiskey than Ian and Gordon, used his teeth to pull out the cork, and he took a swig.
Good. Make sure you don't lose him, and I'll see you when you get back.
Ian grabbed Gordon's arm and shoved him violently towards the horses. Gordon, too, was quite a thespian. Like his sister Polly, he was part of the amateur dramatics company back home. He did Shakespearean performances, the lot, and played along, being well over the top so he could have the guard's attention.
My horse, boy!
Gordon slumped and untied the horse and walked towards Ian. Ian winked at Gordon and opened his hand. Now Gordon knew this was a signal that Ian was going to slap Gordon up the side of the head, and for him to do what he had practiced in stage combat school back at home. As Ian fake-slapped Gordon at the back of the head, Gordon reacted perfectly, and with perfect timing, their winning performance must have worked, as the guards, they chuckled away. Ian then mounted the horse and pulled Gordon up and sat him in front. With a flick of the reins, the horse slowly trotted towards the barrier and towards freedom. All was going surprisingly well, which, as you know if you've heard the other stories, is not how things usually go. So Ian was more than usually cautious, waiting for some kind of trouble to kick off. Which, of course, you'll know that it most certainly did. Our Gordon and the family have obviously, as you've seen, the best luck in the universe. And a raven from outside of the barrier flew and knocked Iam's hat off, whilst nearly knocking him off the horse too. I'd just like to put a little side note in here that the key cards to the facility were specifically designed to stop anyone without a key card from entering apart from animals. How do you think the cow got in and out in the first place, Anyway, back to the story. The guards at the top of the 2 towers next to the barrier found this hilarious and proceeded to laugh heartily at Ian, who they thought was Winston. Their laughter was that infectious that the big guard that Ian had given the whiskey to started to chuckle too, but all the fun ceased when Ian raised his head, not knowing that his hat had been knocked clean off. The watchtower guards nearly jumped out of their towers when they saw Ian's face and not Winston's. Immediately they sounded an alarm and pointed their guns at Ian and Gordon, to which Ian and Gordon froze along with their horse. Then they raised their hands and knew that their cover had been blown. Oh, no. Meanwhile, I love to say that, as you know. I love to leave you completely baffled as to what is the fate of each of our characters, what would happen to Gordon and Ian. But we're forgetting about the girls again, aren't we? So let's take you to Weezer and Polly. Oh, and partially naked Winston to fill you in on their part of the story. Now, Weezer would listen to her husband for quite a while, but wouldn't sit around with idle hands, oh no. So Polly and Weezer decided to interrogate the partially petrified Winston. If you've ever seen cowboy films, you'll know, for a matter of fact, that mostly all of the henchmen don't talk much without a little persuasion, just as Ian did earlier. So the girls decided they would also rig up some kind of creative solution or torture device so Winston would spill more beans. Now I know what you're saying. What beans are there to spill apart from the ones in his pants? Well, as Ian had already taken his clothes, his weapon, and his dignity, Weezer was the kind of woman who'd like to get her money's worth out of absolutely everything, and she grabbed every opportunity to. So she grabbed the ropes that William had tied to Winston's feet and told Polly to grab one too.
Now then, Polly, we're going to walk slowly towards the pond, and the further we get, Winston will get wet.
Winston had had quite enough for today and didn't take long to proceed to spill the beans and told them everything about MacDonald's mining operation.
I'm sorry, I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything. Please just don't take me near those dreaded ducks.
Inadvertently, Weezer and Polly had discovered Winston's Achilles heel. You know, his thing that he is most afraid of in the entire world. I'll give you an example. Our Gordon is petrified of spiders. Let me cast my mind back to a time when Gordon called me and was in quite a flap, telling me to rush over and help. Anyway, when I got there, it was a money spider on the windowsill that I had to shoo out of the house to enable our Gordon to go back inside the house. Oh, yes, he was waiting outside. He really is that scared of spiders, and yes, your suspicions may be true. There may be spiders later in the story. But anyway, back to the ducks and Winston. Our little Polly had an idea and proceeded to the duck pond and picked up one of the biggest ducks she could find. Winston gave off a squeal as Polly picked up the duck and started to blab incoherently anything and everything he could think of.
My favorite food is peach pie. 6 times 6 is 36. I can drink a bottle of whiskey in under 3 minutes. If I eat too many beans, I get gassy. Like I am now. I like to shave my legs and my armpits too.
Now, there's nothing wrong with a man trying to take care of his personal hygiene, is there? Ha ha ha.
Please put the duck down. I'll tell you anything.
Polly sat cross-legged and cradled the duck in her arms like a classical Bond villain and started to stroke its back. Winston, hyperventilating, sat down with relief on his face. Weezer, with a sadistic smile, stepped forward and started to speak.
Tell me everything you know about this operation, or your face meets Mr. Duck's bottom.
No, please. I'll tell you. Okay. Just let me calm down a little bit for a second, and I'll tell you everything. Now, Mr. MacDonald takes or he buys the children, and he makes them his slaves, sending them down into the mines. It's on his land for precious metals, like cobalt. That's why we call them cobalt kids who send down the mine. Let me think. He uses what they call technology to take over everything in this world. He plans to make robots and even transfer the brain of a human into a robot so they can become immortal and live forever. He promised me the same thing. You know, we had an agreement. He promised me the first robot body, so please don't hurt me.
That's all well and good. Now tell me how I access this mine.
Winston flinched and started to squirm, not speaking for a couple of moments, until Weezer prompted Polly with the duck. Polly stood and stopped stroking the duck's back. The duck didn't like it, so in protest and for more stroking, the duck began to quack.
Quack, 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 quack.
Winston let out a little shriek, spilled some more beans in his pants, and started to speak again.
The only way I know to get in there is to use a key card, but let me see. Oh, there is an emergency exit at the back of the mountain. It'll only open from the outside if you can scan your face in the scanner. That's for employees of Mr. MacDonald and Mr. MacDonald himself only.
Right then, Winston. Looks like we're going to take a walk. You, me, Polly, and Mr. Duck.
Weezer then pulled on the ropes attached to Winston's feet and untied them, retying them around his hands.
Lead the way.
Oh, you know what I'm about to say, don't you? Meanwhile, back with our Earman Gordon, the boys had been captured and were taken as prisoners, tied up to chairs and placed in the communications hut inside of the mine. They were currently staring at the back of the guard's head, who was trying desperately on the radio device in front of him to contact Bill Tate or MacDonald himself, but to no avail. This was good news for Ian and Gord, as it gave them time to think of an escape plan. Obviously, they couldn't talk to each other, or else the guard would know. So, in a comical and over-exaggerated fashion, they mimed and tried to lip-read each other. So, just imagine, if you will, not a single sound moving from their mouths. I'll fill in the speech for you, as you can't see their lips moving now, can you?
God, what we gonna do? Any ideas?
I ain't got a clue.
We need to get rid of this guard, or get out of these chairs somehow, but how?
They both sighed and looked around, desperately trying to come up with something. Then our little Gordon spotted something on the table next to him. Cigars and matches. So he violently got Iam's attention, and Iam smiled, gesturing for Gord to get a match if he could. Now Gordon, being quite short in stature, could just about peer his head above the side of the table, and so stretched his neck out, imagining he were a giraffe, and only just managed to purse his lips and grabbed the match. Iam smiled and waited for Gordon to turn back to him. Gordon turned and gestured to Iam's tied-up hands. Iam knew Gordon would try to spit out the match into his hands, and so they both prepped themselves. With a monumental spit, the match flew through the air. It twirled and spiraled and twisted, and just like a basketball, touched the rim of Iam's hand and fell to the floor. Attempt 1 was a miserable failure, so Gordon got another match and steadied his aim, shooting the match through the air, to which it hit Iam's leg. Fail, fail, fail! Come on, Gordon, you can do better than that. I'll save my breath and narration and just say somewhere around the 15th match, Iam caught it between his 2 fingers and turned it around so he could strike it onto the seat and burn the ropes. Well, of course, the ropes weren't catching fire, and the match burnt to Iam's finger, and he dropped it. The last bit of the flame went towards the floor and ignited a few of the other failed attempts that Gordon had thrown on the floor, and started to burn into the wooden floor. What started as a small fire grew quite quickly, and Iam and Gordon didn't know what to do next. The guard was consumed with the radio equipment until his nose started to detect a hint of smoky wood in the air. Spinning around, he could see the small flame on the floor and began to panic. Iam and Gordon looked at each other as the guard stood and was about to go and alert the other guards, when Iam decided this was it, so he rocked back and forth, and with everything he had, he fell forward straight into the guard's groin and head-butted him in the unmentionables. Both the guard and Iam fell to the floor in a heap, and luckily, when Iam fell, the chair broke into pieces, and he was free. Taking no time to spare, he rose like a phoenix from the ashes and clonked the guard over the head with a hefty piece of the chair, rendering him unconscious. Getting quickly to work, Iam untied Gordon, and then he remembered. God, we've got to get out of here quick. Things are gonna blow.
What?
There's those whiskey barrels outside.
Ah!
They burst out of the hut, and as they opened the door, the smoke poured out and the fire grew. Running for cover, the barrels ignited and exploded, covering their escape route out of the entrance of the mine. They had no other choice but to go deeper into the mine and ran as quickly as they possibly could, alerting the other children as they went.
Come on, there's a fire!
As they ran deeper into the mine, they amassed a following of about 30 dirty little children who had been mining for MacDonald's minerals. As they all ran in a crowd, they approached a huge cavern which had mining carts that went deeper into the mine, so they all jumped in, and there was just about enough carts for the entire crew. Pulling a lever on the front cart sent a domino of mining carts shuttling into the mine. They were going at quite a speed and had to keep their heads down as all the commotion had disturbed a load of bats who were darting all over the place. Twisting, turning, ducking, diving, the carts were nearing the end of the track, and one of the kids in the front cart pulled a lever, which I'm guessing was the braking system, as sparks flew from the wheels on the rails and everything started to slow, but not quite enough, as the barrier said end and the line drew closer and closer. They were going to hit the barrier no matter what, and did with quite a thud, and thankfully no one was injured or thrown from the cart. They were all shaken more than a protein shake as they clambered out of the cart and tried to gain their balance after having their legs jellified with the adrenaline from the mining cart ride. It didn't take long for them to gain their bearings, and they were on their way, but on their way to where? Oh, where? The way was dimly lit by torches hanging in quite random locations on the walls. They followed the light as far as they could. With the fire behind them, it grew bigger and bigger and closer and closer. It was getting really hot as the group ran further into the mine's belly. The walls were narrowing as they reached a dead end. Blocking their path was a huge metal door with a keypad at the side. Ian, in desperation, punched in some random numbers and was always met with a flashing red light and an annoying noise that sounded like... Oh, it is annoying. Repeatedly trying, they repeatedly failed. Oh, there was nowhere to run, as the fire had now backed them into the corner, and the heat was worse than a Swedish sauna. Oh, soon they would be burnt to a crisp. Well, God, looks like this is the end of the line. No more adventures for us. Little Gordon's eyes swole up with tears that evaporated as soon as they threatened to run down his cheeks. Ian hugged Gordon tightly. I'm so sorry I couldn't get us out of this one, God. I love you, little bro.
I love you, Ian. I'm sorry I got into this. I'm sorry I'm sorry I went for a pee in the cinema.
Oh, how emotional. Sorry, I do get wrapped up in this story. Oh, all they could hear was the sound of the flames growing closer and closer, and so they closed their eyes and waited for the inevitable. Then, through their eyelids, the world lit up with the light of the outdoor sky, so the boys opened their eyes and saw Weezer, Polly, and Winston stood on the other side of the huge door. It must have been the emergency exit that Winston had mentioned earlier. They all scrambled out, nearly knocking Winston, Polly, and Weezer over like bowling pins as the flames spewed from the mine's exit and burned bright, narrowly avoiding all their bottoms. Getting to their feet, the group embraced in a joyous reunion. They were out of immediate danger, but knew Bill and MacDonald would be out for vengeance, so Ian turned to Winston.
Listen, you've helped us a lot, so we're going to let you go.
What? Really?
Yep.
And with that, Ian punched Winston in the face, knocking him clean out.
Tie him to that tree over there. I thought you said we were letting him go.
Well, we can't just let him roam free. MacDonald will kill him, so I punched him to make sure it would look like we took him prisoner, and tying him to the tree would confirm it, wouldn't it? Besides, you know for a fact, he'll go crawling back to MacDonald and tell him where we're headed. So let's leave him tied to the tree and get out of here, okay?
They nodded and agreed it was probably for the best. After tying Winston to the tree, they set off in the opposite direction of the mine and hoped to find somewhere to shelter for the night. As the sky drew dark, they had been walking for around 4 hours, so left a good bit of distance between them and the mine and decided to look for a sleeping spot. They needed somewhere where them and the now trailing 30 or so orphans could sleep for the night. As luck may have it, they came across a huge cave. It was pretty perfect as Ian felt a spot of rain on his face which turned into a full shower. Approaching with caution, Ian checked the cave. Now, thankfully, it had nobody or no thing residing in it. Squishing into the shelter like sardines in a can, they all fell asleep through pure exhaustion. They slept for about 10 hours, only stirring when the sun crept in and hit their faces. Everyone was stiff and achy. They felt like they'd done a leg workout, you know. Oh, the feeling of a leg workout. Oh, my legs are quite sore right now. Oh, but on with the story. 5 minutes went by, and with a huge effort, the lackadaisy people stretched their weary bodies out. Then, in pure synchronization, they stopped as they heard some commotion outside of the cave. Hand signals it was. Ian told the group to remain quiet, and stay put, so they all breathed very slowly and stealthily while their little hearts pounded in their chests. Ian, with Gordon behind, crept to the entrance of the cave and peered out. They looked around and then couldn't believe their eyes. Oh, it was Bill Tates and his gang. They were holding a young boy who had what looked like a feathery crown upon his head. They couldn't quite hear what they were saying, so they crept closer. When they got in earshot, the voices became clear.
Now you're gonna tell us where the orphans are and the strangers, or else we're gonna throw you in this here river and tie rocks to your legs so you sink to the bottom.
The poor lad was squirming in distress and protesting, saying he didn't know anything, but Bill Tates wasn't one for letting people just live their lives. You know, like any decent human being, he had to interfere where he wasn't needed. The henchmen started tying ropes to the boy, which had boulder-like rocks attached to them. Ian and Gordon waited with bated breath and then looked at each other. and watched in horror as the men threw the young lad into the river, and the current dragged him down slightly as the henchman and Bill turned and rode their horses away. Ian, not taking a second, sprinted down to the riverside and dove in and grabbed one of the huge hulking stones that weighed 100 kilograms and was weighing the lad down, and got it to the riverside. At the same time, our little Gordy wasted no time at all in helping, and dragged the ropes to the side and untied the poor lad's legs. In what was a Herculean effort, Ian dragged the now limp and lifeless body of the boy to the riverside and immediately started CPR. At first, there was no response, and the young lad was motionless. But out of nowhere, he coughed and spewed water all over the place. He was alive. Gasping for air, the lad recovered, and Ian and Gordon sat him up.
"It's okay. You're safe. They're gone now."
The lad looked petrified and didn't hang around to see what would happen next. He bolted off and sprinted away. Gordon and Ian turned to each other and shrugged their shoulders and were happy Bill Tates and his gang had gone, and so decided to venture on into the wilderness and put more distance between them and the MacDonald Brigade. They managed to walk for another 3 hours and then met a huge, and I mean huge, did I stress enough that this was a huge stone wall? It looked unclimbable, especially to non-experienced climbers like our guys. Deciding to take a break, they all sat down to rest, but before they could even get comfortable, it's like that annoying brother or sister who has to plague you when you're tired and you just want to go to bed. Sorry. Before they could get comfortable, Bill Tates and his gang emerged from the forest behind them. They all stood and were in a face-off with Bill Tates and his gang. Oh, the trouble. They had guns and the group didn't. Oh, it wasn't going to be an easy situation or a fair fight. It seemed like they were done for. Bill Tates started to chuckle away.
So you thought you could get away? You thought you could get away with destroying Mr. MacDonald's mine? And that stunt you pulled at the saloon. Once I seek vengeance, I make it a lifetime mission. So I'm gonna...
He nearly finished his sentence when they all heard a wolf-type howl. Woo!
What was that? Anyway, like I was saying, I'm gonna seek... what was that? I've lost my place now, boy. Anyway, I was saying something about,
the vengeance, boss.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Billy Bob. My vengeance, I make it my lifelong mission to...
Again he couldn't finish his sentence, as an arrow flew past Bill Tate's head, hitting one of his henchmen off of his horse.
What the...
At the top of the stone wall there appeared a team of Indians pointing their bows and arrows at Bill Tate's.
Boys! Run! It's the Indians!
And so Bill Tates and his gang retreated into the woods for cover. Gordon looked up the wall and saw the young lad who Bill Tates and his gang were torturing. He had brought backup. Ha! What a great little chap! Once Bill and his gang had retreated, the Indians made all sorts of howling noises and jumped up and down with ferocious energy. Not knowing their fate, Ian, Weezer, Gordon, and Polly froze, as did the group of orphans they had with them. The Indians disappeared for a moment, and then, shooting from the top of the big wall, came rope ladders. The gang took this as an invitation and began climbing, which took quite a Herculean effort. Now, I don't know if you have ever tried to transverse a cliffside while climbing a rope ladder, but it isn't a small feat. Anyway, back to our tale. The gang and orphans finally got to the top and were greeted by some pretty fierce-looking Indian warriors with the lad that they had saved in the middle.
Welcome to our land. Here you are welcome and safe from the others down below.
With open arms, they were greeted as champions. This was very generous. Oh, I wonder what will happen next. Following the warriors, the group were led through a forest which took them to a clearing and a whole village of Indians who were round fires and in teepees. I'm sure your imagination can fill it all in. You know, cowboy country, Indians, feather top hats, fires, teepees, half-naked women. Oh my, that's a bit naughty, isn't it? Oh, you get the idea. The group were led to a big tent in the center of this huge Indian village. The lad they saved pulled back the teepee door and gestured for Ian, Gord, Weezer, and Polly to enter, so they did. Wow is all that I can say. The tent was elaborately decorated with sacred Indian artifacts and actually had a roaring fire pit in the center. They were each amazed and sat around the fire on the floor and waited. After quite some time, the tent door opened again, and in walked a mountain of a man with a large stomach, but it wasn't a soft stomach. It looked firm and solid, as if it was covered in a thick band of muscle. He sat down opposite the guys with a thud, and stared hard at them for quite a while. It was one of those awkward moments where you think someone has challenged you to a staring contest but hasn't, and it felt extremely uncomfortable and weird. Finally, he started to speak. "You don't belong in these lands. You come from far away, don't you?" Gordon plucked up the courage to speak.
Yes, Mr. Chief, sir. We do come from far away, and I don't think you would believe me if I told you.
I keep my eyes and ears open, my young friend, and I know you are from a future place. A different place to here. You see, I am an Indian mystic, and follow the goings-on of the universe, and know your time is not here and now. It is to the future, and you must go back there to make sure things are restored to normal. The group couldn't believe the mystic Indian knew so much. I will help you to go there to your time, and then peace can be restored to these lands. But first, you must help me and my people.
What can we do? We will help with anything.
Let me tell you the story.
Story?
Yes. Sit comfortable and you will understand. They all got as comfortable as they possibly could, as it may be numb bum time, especially if the mystic stories were anything like Grandad's. You could get trapped for hours. The huge Indian mystic rose from the floor and picked up a pipe from the corner of the room and loaded the end with some sort of herb. He then pulled a small twig from the fire and lit his long pipe. Taking a long inhale, he blew smoke all over the tent, and it became quite difficult to see. Then, through the smoke, you could see the story beginning to form, in not quite HD quality, but it was pretty clear. I love this magic stuff. On with the story.
Many, many moons ago, I was being taught the ancient ways by the head Indian mystic at the time. He was a kind, gentle soul who brought peace to all around. One day he was training me in the art of healing when he sensed that something in our world altered. Like today, he noticed that the fabric of the time was opened and someone or something had crossed time to be in our world. That someone they call MacDonald. He came to us like you from a distant place in time. Now, my mentor, the mystic who was teaching me, was a peaceful man. He approached MacDonald and was met by a sharp blade and was killed. My people and I are seen as enemies in most places. Not all, but most places, and the town that MacDonald first arrived in did not like us at all, and so they didn't see MacDonald as doing any wrong and took him in. We did not know how evil the man was and is. He brought what he calls technology to the town and improved the lives of the villagers, but this was done with a hefty price. Soon he acquired money, and along with that a band of men and women to do his bidding. They took over the town and needed workers for the mines MacDonald decided to open. The workers he took were young children, as they were strong, small, perfect for narrow tunnels. He advanced his hold on this region, but is still cautious to tread on our sacred land, as he fears the Indians still have power to defeat him. But my scouts have seen that he is building metal men that aren't hurt by arrow or axe, and these will be a problem for us. He plans to take over the entire territory, and we simply can't allow this, as we are free people, and this land is for us to share, not to be owned by one man. We need your help to make MacDonald go back and stop his reign of terror on this time.
Wow, we didn't know it had got that bad. Oh, we're so sorry, and we'll be happy to help in any way that we can.
Once we take care of this, I will get you back home with ancient knowledge and magic.
The group looked at each other as the smoke dissipated and nodded in agreement.
Well, I think we were sent here for a reason, and this is definitely it.
Right.
Where do we start, though?
There was an awkward silence, which was broken by Wisa.
Well, we need a meeting with all your war chiefs, strongest warriors.
The Indian mystic's eyes sparkled with a sign of hope as he rushed out of the tent, assumably gathering his finest warriors.
Right, guys, what are we going to do?
No idea.
Well, that's a good start. Get your thinking hats on.
And so the group went silent and put on their best thinking faces as the little hamster wheels in their brains started to spin. Oh, it wasn't a nice sight, really. They all looked like they were having a poo. TMI, I know, but it's hilarious. Why not? After 10 minutes, steam was nearly coming out of their ears as they formulated a plan. Just as they were going to swap ideas, they heard a woman scream in the background, so naturally sprang onto their feet to investigate. Upon opening the door of the tent, they were met with people running into the other tents for shelter. But shelter from what?
Polly, you stay behind and stick with Wisa, okay?
Okay.
The group weaved through the fleeing crowd and noticed that a bunch of the village warriors were running forward near to the cliff edge. They were firing their arrows down towards something, but what? Ian, Gordon, Wisa and Polly peered over the edge of the mountainside and couldn't believe their eyes. Climbing up the rocks was a robot. It wasn't even grabbing for handholds. It simply shoved its fingers into the stone, making holes to pull itself up. The robot was climbing at quite a blistering pace, so they had to do something, anything, to stop it getting to the village. So Iam instructed the Indians to stop shooting arrows as they didn't penetrate the bot's tough, armorous skin.
We need to knock it down somehow. Roll that boulder to the edge quickly and push it over on my signal. Ready?
Scrambling behind a quite sizable boulder, they all pushed it towards the edge and managed to get it there just in time, as the robot had only a few handholds left until it reached the summit.
Now!
They pushed the boulder over, and with some good luck it hit the bot, knocking it back to the ground and squishing it into the dirt below. A huge cheer was given out as the warriors raised their spears high and howled like wolves to the sky.
Wait!
Iam had a bad feeling and peered over the edge again, and he could see the boulder below. It was, so far, motionless. But appearing out of the back side of it, he could see the robot's head. Yes, they had managed to hit it, but the boulder only trapped it at the bottom. The bot squirmed and jolted with madness and rage until it pulled an arm and leg off to free itself. It was obviously going to stop at nothing to get everyone at the top of the cliff, and with difficulty it adapted itself to using one arm and one foot to clamber up the wall again. Its only advantage was the holes it had made from the first attempt. Iam turned to Polly and Wisa.
We've got to get the villagers to safety. Take them into the woods behind the village and wait there.
The girls nodded and started to alert every man, woman, and child. At first they didn't pay much attention, but then the village mystic spoke up and all the people started to move and evacuate their homes. Gordon and Iam didn't have a clue as to what to do next, as there were no more boulders, so they scrambled around searching for something, anything, but alas, there was nothing. The bot managed to get to the top of the wall and with a clumsy effort pulled itself onto the land. A few of the brave warriors took the bot head on with their weapons, but to no avail.
They were tossed aside as though they were nothing. Even with one arm and one leg, the bot was terrifyingly dangerous. Iam and Gord beckoned the other warriors to follow them as they rushed into the village, trying to come up with another plan.
God, get some rope and take the warriors with you. We have to tie this thing up. I'll be the bait and lure it into the centre. And the moment I do, you tie this thing up, yeah?
Okay, but be careful, Ian.
Gord and the warriors ran as fast as their legs would take them as Iam stood in the centre of the village waiting for the bot. It was a lumbering, slow bot now that it didn't have 2 feet, but like a horror movie, it slowly and menacingly made its way towards Iam with its eyes pulsating red. Iam took a deep breath and waited for the bot to come close. As it did, he shouted, "Now!" And... I just said, and... Perhaps I didn't make myself quite clear. Iam was about to face sudden annihilation, and Gordon and the warriors were nowhere to be seen. The bot wasn't messing about and took a swipe at Iam, who gracefully dodged the blow.
Now, God, now!
The bot took another swipe at Iam, but he shifted backwards, and it tore straight through his clothes like a knife through butter. It then raised its arm and, like a sledgehammer, swiftly brought its fist down towards Iam's head. Iam raised his arm to block it, and you know what happened next, didn't you? Oh, it's going to be like a knife through butter, like I just said. Oh. But Iam managed to block it. But how? Well, if you listened to our first story, you would remember that Iam lost his arm in a fight against King Shwebi and had a mechanical arm which, as demonstrated here, came in handy. It was like 2 swords clashing together as Iam then decided to attack and punched the bot with his mechanical arm, which knocked it to the ground. It was motionless, well, for a few seconds anyway, as the smile was wiped off of Iam's face as it rose from the ground and again advanced towards him. It was about to attack, when from out of nowhere finally Gord and the villagers with an outstretched rope clotheslined the bot backwards. In pure rage the bot got up again. Geez, what's it gonna take to stop this thing? Oh, sorry, I do get worked up about these things. Let's continue. The bot got up again, but this time the guys were pumped and ready. They tangled the bot up and sprinted around it like a maypole, tying it up with the rope. It was now encapsulated in a cocoon of rope. All you could see was its head, which peered from the top. Its eyes were red, and it looked just plain evil, staring at Iam and Gordon as the warriors anchored it to the ground. Then, all of a sudden, its eyes changed color. They became blue. The blue eyes projected a hologram onto the ground, and a figure of a man they hadn't seen before was right in front of them. The Indians all gasped, as they thought it was an evil spirit, until the quality of the hologram sharpened, and one of the warriors exclaimed, "MacDonald!" They then knew it was the image of the creator of the robot.
Well, 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 it seems by the grace of God you have managed to somehow stop my robot. Well, this displeases me so, and I wanted to look upon the faces that destroyed my creation so I could personally give you a message.
You have, in fact, messed with the wrong person, my friends, and I want to tell you to make peace with this world, as you won't be in it for much longer. I will rule these territories, no matter what you do, and that is inevitable. The bot you fought was only the tip of the iceberg. As we speak, I am making an army of androids, and they will be part organic and part robotic. My loyal followers I have gained here are going to join me in my quest for immortality, and we will not stop until this is achieved. In 1 week, we will come for you, and you can't run, and you can't hide. So make peace with whatever god you wish to, as you will all perish in my quest for world dominance.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting a bit bored of this.
Yeah, you've passed that yard on to me.
It is a bit boring.
What do you think we should do, God? Smashy, smashy? Sounds good to me, Weiss.
MacDonald's face was a picture after he had basically given them a huge, sinister monologue threatening them. They had basically the audacity to mock him. Oh, marvelous. Just as he was about to speak again, Gordon Ian picked up 2 rocks and pounded down on the robot until it was nothing but pieces of metal and wires. The warriors relaxed and took the robot body to the edge of the cliff and threw it to the bottom. Ian whistled and little Polly's ears pricked up. She knew that was the signal that all was good and they could come out of hiding. After they all returned to the tents, night fell, and all was deadly quiet, as all they could hear was the crackling of fires, and torches lit the grounds of the village, with warrior guards standing on lookout. Ian, Gord, Polly, and Wisa all gathered in the mystic's tent and took food and water, as they were so very tired and needed to think what to do next.
Any ideas?
Well, all I know is that we've got a week, like he said. So I'm guessing he wasn't that ready, was he, for a big attack? And now that he's seen us, maybe he's a little bit scared. But I don't know. I keep asking myself lots of different questions. How much resources has he got? Or maybe he just needs another week and he has an army. I know, that's what concerns me.
Well, what do? We can't run.
No, he will find us like last time.
Ah. What?
We have to do a McAllister.
A what?
You know, a Kevin.
I'm still not getting it, Ian. Come on, spell it out.
Home Alone.
Oh, yeah. So, what are you meaning?
Well, we have a week to set traps and get ready.
Yeah, but if you remember, he doesn't kill the bad guys, does he, in the film?
I know, but this isn't a movie, and all the traps in the film would probably have done those 2 in the first few minutes anyway.
True.
So, I suggest we make traps and then all hide and use ranged attacks. They'll basically walk into a minefield and we can take them out by surprise. It's all we've got. So it's set. Let's get some sleep, then tomorrow we can McAllister the place, yeah? Agreed?
They all nodded in agreement. The mystic looked very puzzled, but comforted by the group's expressions and was happy to go with anything they came up with. They then all ate until their bellies were suitably stuffed and snuggled next to the glorious fire, drifting in and out of pure exhaustion, and then fell into a deep sleep. The sun rose on the following morning, and the orange rays crept through their tent, waking them up, each in turn. Taking a hearty breakfast and doing their usual morning business, they were raring to go. Each of them came up with their own traps and split off into teams, giving each other 15 warriors each. Iam took the cliffside and instructed the men to go and gather oil from anywhere they could to pour down the cliff, making it extremely hard to climb. Gordon took the village, and the warriors, women and children, dug deep holes and filled them with spears, then covered them to hide them. He also made everyone dig random holes to make the terrain hard to traverse. Polly and Weezer took the forest behind the village and decided to make all sorts of contraptions. They made huge holes in the floor with spikes, catapults between 2 trees, bags of rocks suspended above to swing and smash and squish anything in their path. All was going to plan, and it took 3 days to ready the place for battle. On the morning of the 4th day, the villagers gathered supplies and essentials to hide in the forest in anticipation of MacDonald's army. Just as they were all going to prep more traps, they heard a horn noise coming from the cliff. The Indian who was keeping lookout had sounded the war horn. The noise made the hairs on Gordon's neck stand on end as they rushed to look down the cliff. At the bottom of the cliff there was a group of robots who looked quite human-like, but the beaming red laser eyes gave them away. It was weird. They had skin and everything. Oh, how weird! And sorry, they startled me for a moment. Back with the story. They started their ascent up the cliff.
MacDonald's lied. He wanted us to think that we've got more time, but we haven't. Oh, we need to get ready now. Everyone to your posts.
Scrambling to their stations, warriors climbed trees and grabbed their bows, arrows, knives, and spears. The women took the children to safety, trekking deep into the woods and getting away from the village. One of the orphans ran up to Iam, and he had something wrapped in a cloth, and thrust it into Iam's hands, then nodded and ran back to the other orphans. Iam opened the cloth and smiled, and then ran to his post, grabbing a satchel and stuffing the cloth and its contents into it. Oh, what? I wonder what's in there. Why can't I see? Why can't I let you know? Oh, I have to read more of this story. It would spoil it anyway if I knew what it was and I told you what it was. Oh, I'm annoying, but it's all part of the story and the fun. Anyway. The robot group were now on their way up the cliff. They were climbing in a single file and scaled the cliffside easily until they reached the oil, that is. Even their vice-like grip was finding it difficult to climb. But slowly and surely they did. Gordon was with one of the Indian warriors in a tree overlooking the village and down the cliffside. They watched and waited to see if the oil would stop them, but unfortunately it only slowed down their efforts, and so God signaled Plan B to the Indian. What I didn't tell you and forgot to mention before was part of the oil trap was a tiny little barrel of gunpowder which the Indian had wedged in a small crack in the cliff. This was so, on Gordon's signal, the Indian could fire a flame arrow into the barrel and watch the fireworks show. Oh, surprise! Gordon nodded, and the Indian ignited a single arrow with fire. Taking a deep breath, I told you it was deep. The Indian drew back his bow and fired the arrow with 100% precision into the center of the barrel of gunpowder, just as the robots had reached it. And yes, you guessed it, kaboom! Ah, 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 what a glorious explosion! It threw the robots clear off the cliffside and tumbling down to the ground. Our little Gordy, happy with his efforts, smiled.
Oh, we did it, and at the first hurdle as well.
There was a huge cloud of black smoke emanating upwards into the sky. Gordon and the warrior climbed down the tree and walked to the cliff edge to take a peek, just to double-check what they had done had stopped the robots. Of course, it's a good plan, because you know what happens, don't you? They peered over the edge into the thick black smoke and couldn't see a thing, so decided to wait until it cleared a little. It really stank badly, so Gordon stepped back as the warrior stepped forward to check. The smoke was very thick and heavy. The warrior held his breath and stuck his head over the edge, which was to his detriment, as a metallic arm came from nowhere and grabbed his necklace and threw him off the cliff. In pure terror, our little Gordon sprinted into the village as the robots, now with no skin, were marching for the village to destroy them all. The robots moved slowly. Like I said before, they were like a character from a horror film, you know. They walk slowly, but they always catch up with you in the end. Oh, poor Gordon and the gang. Gordon reached the village, and Ian knew immediately that the cliff had been breached. Ian and Gordon ran for the forest, leaving the warrior Indians to fight as they went to be part of the final stand with Weezer and Polly. The robots reached the village and were quite ready for the assault that ensued. Indian warriors leapt from the tents and out of trees to fend off the bots. Spears and arrows flew through the air, and the warriors did everything in their power to defeat the robots and managed to take down 3 out of 10. The robots were skilled in combat and took out 40 Indians, with the rest fleeing to the forest ready to make a final stand. On their way out, one of the warriors blew a war horn to signal their arrival in the forest so the others could get ready.
Positions, everyone. This is the last stand. Be ready.
They scrambled to their stations in readiness for the bots, and then there was silence. Nothing. The robots lumbered through so slowly it was like the time you're waiting in the doctor's office. You know, when you're waiting to be seen, everyone sits there, clenching their fists with anxious apprehension to go and see the doctor. You know the feeling. It's boring and awful. Anyway, on with the story. The robots finally appeared and stopped at the edge of the forest, standing still. It was like a cowboy standoff, but who would be the victor and draw the first weapon? Then one of the robots' heads opened up and projected a hologram into the sky. Yes, you guessed it right. It was MacDonald.
Now I know I gave you all a week, but I simply couldn't wait and wanted rid of you sooner rather than later. So here is my mini-robot army, and I'm making more as we speak. This demonstration has shown you that your weapons have been inferior, and many of your people have lost their lives through your stupidity. About 50 to my recollection. These robots are simply my prototypes, and I needed a testing ground, and the village was ideal. You managed to stop a mere 3. That's nothing. We will wipe you all out before nightfall, and then enslave the women and children, as I need more workers for my mines. And
Using the element of surprise, Weezer and Polly used one of the catapults they made between the two trees that I mentioned earlier to fire a huge bowling ball-sized boulder at the robot's head, to which, with precision and an element of luck, smashed it clean off. Ha ha ha! And obviously the hologram went off too and sent another robot to its grave. Next, something weird happened. The other robots tore both arms from the downed bot and attached them to one of the other robots. Now it had 4 arms instead of 2. That's a bit insane. How are you guys going to get out of this one? The robots then advanced into the forest to finish off Gordon and the guys. Oh, no. It was still very quiet as the robots advanced, and then a horn blew, and the warriors leapt out facing the remaining bots. The warriors stood in a line and didn't move, as they were the final wall the robots had to breach to get to the women and children, who were now trekking as far as they could into the forest, but they didn't really have a big lead at all. The action ensued with the robots falling into a huge pit which was dug by the warriors earlier. Ian didn't waste any time and ran past while simultaneously lighting a stick of dynamite. Ha ha! And where did he get that stick from, you say? Well, if you take your mind back to earlier and the orphan that handed Ian something. Do you get it now? Can you recall? Well, it was 5 sticks of dynamite. Ha ha ha! This gave them an edge, and the robots go boom boom. Ha ha! Sorry. Calm, breathe, chill the excitement, and proceed. The dynamite exploded with a glorious flash and a huge boom, with robot limbs flying all over the place. Huzzah! They had won! Everyone rejoiced and could live happily ever after. Oh, well done. The end. Yeah, right. You know that isn't the end, don't you? I can't just say, oh, the end, happily ever after. No. The robot limbs were scattered all over the forest. The Indian army rejoiced, jumping up and down, but Ian, Gord, Weezer, and Polly waited for the smoke to clear from the pit. After all the commotion and clearing of smoke, they looked down into the pit to see parts of arms, legs, and heads strewn all over the place. The gang made a huge sigh and turned to the other Indians to smile. I love a good victory, don't you? Well, it would have been if it weren't for what happened next. The parts of the robots that were left crawled towards each other and assembled themselves into a humongous robot that was tall enough to get out of the pit with ease. The newly formed robot had 4 heads, 6 arms, and 3 legs. It was a proper mishmash of parts. The gang alerted the Indians, to which they stopped cheering and went into the woods for cover. Climbing from the pit, the new Megabot looked extremely dangerous and just stood watching Ian, Gord, Weezer, and Polly. It was menacing and very awkward. One of the heads opened, projecting the now familiar Pooh-Face MacDonald onto the ground.
Well, well, well. I am quite surprised, but now, as you can see, I had learnt my lesson from before and made this Megabot better and more adaptable. It will now, on my command, destroy this place unless you surrender everything and bend your knee to my greatness. I'll give you 2 minutes to decide. What do you guys think?
Well, you know he's only going to enslave or torture us if we surrender.
Yeah, and he'll probably just capture the Indians anyway.
So what do we do? This thing looks pretty dangerous.
Well, I think we try the old 1-2 buckle my shoe.
Yeah, great plan.
They nodded and turned to the projection of MacDonald. Weezer stepped forwards as the others crept slowly backwards.
Well, Mr. MacDonald, it seems we are very much outmatched by your technology and will bend the knee on the condition that...
As Lisa was waffling and monologuing, keeping the hologram busy, the others retreated into the forest looking for the warrior Indians. So now Weezer had been monologuing for about 5 minutes and MacDonald had gotten bored.
All right, that's enough. Go say your goodbyes and then come quietly and we will leave the Indians be for now.
Gordon, Ian and Polly had emerged from the woods and joined Weezer.
Okay, we'll say our goodbyes.
The group turned and Ian coughed. Ahem. This was a signal for the remaining warrior Indians to pounce out from behind the bot and tie its legs up, to which it fell to the ground with a huge thud, shaking everything around. Gordon, Ian, and Polly then turned quickly with a stick of lit dynamite each and sprinted to the robot, shoving 4 sticks in any crevice they could find, and then they ran for the hills. To say the explosion was glorious would have been a total understatement. It was like bonfire night times 50. The robot was practically vaporized. All that was left was one of the heads, and that was charred to a crisp. Oh, I do love a good crisp, don't you? Ha ha! Ian scooped it up and presented it to the mystic as a symbolic gift of MacDonald's defeat, to which the mystic smiled. After the smoke had cleared once again, they waited to see if there would be another surprise, but all there was silence, golden silence. Even Polly was quiet too. Ha ha! Yes, you have helped my people to survive, and for this we thank you, but you must fulfill your promise.
What? We defeated him.
Yes, but he will make more, and then attack again, so you have to stop him.
Jeez, grateful much?
What was that?
Nothing.
Gordon slumped to the ground and sighed. He was knackered. Buggered. Who writes these things? Oh, yes, that is me. I'm getting myself into bother now, so I'll stop and continue the story, yes?
Well, we best get rested and regain our strength if we're going to sort this mess out. Jeez.
Nodding in agreement, the entire tribe went back to the village to rest and get some shut-eye. The night came, and each weary warrior fell fast asleep with their heads hitting the pillow like a stone to water. They slept like babies and woke to the most beautiful sunrise that any one of them had ever seen. Dragging themselves out of their tents, they all yawned and stretched.
Right, what do we do next?
Clueless faces all around.
They all looked like they were on the toilet trying to poo, but that's a bit TMI, too much information. Their little brains were on overdrive. You could nearly see the steam coming out of their ears. Weezer broke the silence.
Let's sneak into the place where MacDonald is and kidnap him and drag him here. Then we can decide what we'll do from there.
Good idea. They went to the village's mystic to quiz him on MacDonald's whereabouts.
We do not know him. We have never seen him, only his men and machines.
Don't you think that's a bit weird that you've not seen him?
Right, that's enough of the Get on with the story.
Well, we'll have to find him to capture him, won't we?
Off we go then on another pilgrimage to find this elusive bad guy.
Now I'm going to save you a little bit of time and fast forward the journey a little bit. So, this part of the story I'm going to tell you, it involved baked beans, campfires, and lots of burps, farts, and so after all that, and a few days and nights and 3 days' travel, they arrived at another cowboy village. The Indians had given them supplies and water for their journey there and back, and also a couple of fine horses, too. Walking into the town, they all looked ragged and disheveled. Our young adventurers did notice, though, that again, like before, the townfolk gave them quite queer looks, as they all didn't much like strangers coming to town, but took the opportunity to try and sell them all sorts of things.
Hey there,
Hey,
boy.
mister,
You
could you
have
some
some
new
boots?
Now it's not too late to get yourself coffee.
They had to practically beat the townsfolk off with sticks. They were like flies congregating around poop. After the hustle and bustle, they all went to the barber shop, as we all know that is where you might find juicy bits of information that is passed around the towns. You know, it happens in films all the time, so Ian had a little bit of stubble and decided he would probe the barber for information. Weezer, Polly, and Gordon browsed other shops and asked questions too. After about an hour, they all met back up.
Right, guys, after getting a very close and clean shave by the barber, he told me that MacDonald lives in a mansion just outside of this town and doesn't like to be disturbed, so we best not go there.
So does that mean that's where we're going?
Yeah, God, of course it does. Well, we better set off, as it will be getting dark soon.
The merry band went in the direction the barber told them and could see a great big huge mansion coming into view on the horizon. They decided to make camp in the forest near the house so they could rest up and come up with a plan.
Right, so what do you think we should do?
Well, we could stealth attack him in the night. Yeah, but he might have some security. Possibly.
We need to scope the place out and come up with a plan of action.
Okay, let's get close to the house, but not too close, mind, and see what happens.
So off they went in the thick of night. It was a very dark night, as the clouds shrouded the sky, not leaving much moonlight to guide their paths. All they could do was walk towards the mansion of a house that had light brightening the windows. As they drew ever closer, they noticed Bill Tates and a gang of other guards outside the front door sat roasting a hog on the fire, laughing and joking. It was stakeout time. from a distance, of course, and so the guys watched the house with eagle eyes looking for MacDonald or a possible way to gain access.
This could take a while, so
We'll skip forward 2 hours to when the guards had eaten up and were snoring away. When they had all fallen asleep, Ian and Gordon went around the side of the house and saw a maid open the back door and take out a hefty basket of washing ready to peg out on the washing line.
I think I know how we're going to get him, but we'll have to do it tomorrow night, as the maid's just gone back in.
What you thinking?
Well, I think if we dirty the clothes, she'll probably wash them again and then hang them out tomorrow night, and then we can sneak up and get in.
Good idea.
Let's make some dirty laundry, Gord.
Ian and Gordon scooped up handfuls of dirt and quickly raced to the house, putting the dirt into the fresh laundry. Oh, that's going to be a pain in the bum for that maid, but anyway... They were doing so well, too, but you won't believe it. You simply won't. All the immaculate plan wasted. Well, the minute they got close to the house, an alarm screeched as, yes, you guessed it, Gordon tripped over a tripwire.
God, hide quick!
Well, Gordon being Gordon, he leapt into the now dirty laundry basket and pulled the lid on top. Ian ran into the darkness and hid behind a tree, hoping Polly and Lisa would do the same, because in a matter of seconds the guards swarmed the side of the house, searching for any intruders. They searched all over the place, except, yes, the little laundry basket where our Gordon was hiding. Oh, he was safe for the moment, but how long would that last? Oh, I don't know. The guards shouted all sorts and fired their guns in the air.
Ain't nothing but some sort of animal or critter behind here, boys. It's okay. Yeah, I'm right. It was a critter. Look over there. It scrambled in the bushes.
And with that, they all went back to their campfire and settled down. Gordon poked his head up so that he could just about see out of the barrel of a washing basket, and he was just checking to see if the coast was clear. Then the door opened again, and the maid reappeared, opening the laundry basket.
Oh la la, what has happened here? The laundry is just too dirty.
Obviously, Gordon had wormed and squirmed his way down when he heard the maid open the door and was at the bottom of the basket covered in dirty quilts. The well-built maid picked the basket up and took it into the house. Well, they had wanted to get in, and this wasn't exactly according to Ian and Gordon's plan, but anyway, they managed to get inside of the house. So little Gordon inside of the washing basket was waiting for the right time to open the lid and escape. His proof came when the maid dropped the washing basket onto the ground, and Gordon did his best not to let the air escape from his lungs as not to alert the maid.
I will leave this well tomorrow.
With that, the maid left the room and there was silence. Gordon peered out of the basket and couldn't see very much as the room was dimly lit with a single candle that looked like it was on its way out as it ate the wick. So, thinking fast, our little bro decided to get out and explore a little, so he initiated stealth mode and took off his shoes so he could be like a little stealth assassin. Oh, Gordy, I do love you. He crept around the kitchen and grabbed a rolling pin just in case he needed it and stuffed it into his belt. Taking a huge breath, he went to the outer door to get back to Ian, but it was bolted shut, so he had no other choice but to venture deeper into the house. Upon opening the opposite door, he did it with an air of caution as he entered a lobby with a huge antique clock standing beside the front door and a staircase in the middle. Oh yes, and there was a grand piano at the other side of the door. Everything was quite splendid and magnificent, lit by candlelight. Ah, I love a little bit of mood lighting. Candlelight so enchanting, mysterious, and yet comforting. It's no time for that now. So sorry. On we go. Gordon stuck to the wall as his eyes looked to the front door, and then he remembered Bill Tates and his gang were camping right outside of the front door, so he couldn't go that way. Oh, frustration! Then, all of a sudden, the piano lid opened and the keys started to play. This gave Gord a chill down his spine. It was quite frightening, as he thought it was a ghost, and he shot up, startled, looking everywhere for somewhere to hide. A tapestry was hanging on the wall, and so he shimmied himself behind it, praying he wouldn't be seen. The piano played a few notes on itself, and then the huge antique clock door sprung open and a man climbed out, huffing and puffing. He had dirty goggles on and an apron, and his face was extremely dirty. The mystery man crossed to the piano and pressed a few of the keys, and the clock door snapped shut, and the lid of the piano slowly closed. Then he took his goggles and apron off and wearily walked upstairs. Once silence was restored and the coast was clear, Gordon crept out to inspect the clock. He looked like a puppy, tilting its head here and there, side to side, trying his best to understand how to open it. Then he thought he would try the piano, so opened the lid and pressed the same keys the mystery man did, and hey presto, instant success. The clock door sprang open. Gordon walked over to the clock's open door and looked inside. For a moment, there was nothing but pitch black darkness. And then the clock's inside illuminated with a light emanating from below inside of the clock. Deciding to venture inside of the clock, our little bro noticed a ladder, so he climbed inside of the clock and pulled the door shut. Climbing down the ladder, Gordon discovered a hidden laboratory filled with wires, robot brains in jars, the works. There was all sorts of madness surrounding him. He wasn't at all surprised with knowing what MacDonald had just done with the robots. He must have stumbled upon MacDonald's secret lair. Being the little inquisitive mite that our Gordon is, he decided to investigate further by rummaging around just about everything that he could get his little mitts on. Obviously, he was looking for a way out or some sort of weapon when he heard a noise coming from a bookcase at the back of the room. He waltzed over to listen closely, and it sounded like someone sobbing. So he decided to pull the books on the shelves, searching for a hidden lever. You know our Gordon enjoys movies, and hidden rooms at the back of bookcases are classics for escape routes or hidden treasures, so he thought he would try. After pulling somewhere in the region of 30 books, He placed his little hands on a blue, hard-covered book that had a title of Mad Scientists of the 21st Century. A fitting book, he thought. And so he pulled the book, and unlike the others, it offered resistance and then made a click to which he could hear gears grinding, and then all of a sudden the bookcase shifted to the side, revealing a jail cell. In the corner he could see a young woman cowering. She looked slightly different to a normal human. For starters, her brain on top of her head, well, it's usually where the brain is, in the top of the head. Oh, who writes these things anyway? Her brain on the top of her head was in a glass jar. But her face, it was feminine, and it looked real, with real tears streaming down her beautiful cheeks. Her arms were robotic, and so were her legs. Her torso was covered in what looked like armor plating, with a red plate covering the heart. Gordon gulped and stood silent for a moment, not knowing what to say or do, and you know our Gordon isn't too good when it comes to speaking to the ladies. But then he remembered he was stuck in a mad scientist's secret lab with nowhere to go and was probably going to get discovered sometime soon, so he thought it best to ask the woman a few questions.
Hello?
The moment Gordon spoke to the woman, she stopped crying and shot up onto her feet with lightning-like speed and ran over to the bars that separated her and Gordon and stared hard into his eyes.
Do I repulse you? Look at what he has done to me.
Tears streamed down her face once again as she didn't even blink and kept perfect eye contact with Gordon. Gordon looked like a deer that had been dazzled in oncoming headlights. He was completely stunned by what he beheld before him.
Well, do I repulse you, sir?
Mustering up all the courage he could, our little Gordon replied.
Of course not.
What? But look at me.
So, that doesn't matter to me, and it shouldn't matter to anyone else.
The woman broke eye contact and was lost for words.
Why are you down here, and why are you behind these bars?
Well, it's quite a long story, really. I was given to MacDonald as a gift when he arrived, and I was told that I would be a maid for the house, to clean and cook, but then he lured me down here into his private quarters and tried to kiss me, to which I turned away, and then he punched me in the face, and I was out cold until I woke up in here. First, he took my brain and face and heart to put into this thing that I call a body, and I am the first in the line of cyborg, part human and part machines. That's what he told me.
Wow, that's awful. I'm so sorry.
It's not your fault. He said he made me better and that many more cyborgs would be born soon thanks to me.
But why are you in this cell?
Well, it's because I said I didn't want any part of this, and I wanted to just be left alone, and he just didn't listen to me and took me and ran tests and experiments on me. He threatened to wipe my memory and reprogram my brain if I didn't cooperate. I just don't know what to do.
That's terrible. Tell you what, let's get you out of here and escape.
Really, sir? Are you genuine?
Yeah, really. And I don't say things I don't mean. Now, how are we going to get you out? Is there a key?
There isn't one down here. You see the panel on the side of the door? He comes in and puts his hand on it.
Ah, handprint recognition. I've seen this in a lot of films. This might be a bit of a tricky one, to be fair.
Okay, I don't know what that means, sir, but okay.
Well, I'm going to close the bookcase up and tidy things up a little bit so nobody knows that I've been here, okay?
Oh, okay, sir. I'm used to the darkness now.
You won't be in there much longer. I'm not leaving without you.
Gordon did what he said and pushed the bookcase back into place, and he heard the gears again, to which the bookcase slid, and the cell was hidden. Next, he made sure the lab looked as clean and tidy, well, as clean and tidy as it was before he himself had come down here and made a complete mess, and then he hid behind one of the computer consoles. He hid there for about 30 minutes until he heard the door from the old antique clock open and the patter of feet coming down the ladder. MacDonald must have been on his way back. Reaching the bottom of the ladder, MacDonald crossed the room with a bottle of whiskey in his hand and headed straight for the bookcase and opened the secret door. He stood staring at the woman who was doing her best job to sob in the corner and make everything look as it did before. Then he started to speak.
Well, my dear, it looks like we will have to accelerate my plans. The Indians defeated my robots, so we moved to Plan B. Yes, and I need all available power, which means your brain needs wiping unless you help me to stop them.
The woman's head rose and she stared hard at MacDonald.
No, sir, I will not.
Well, I was hoping that you had come around, but obviously no. Well, you're damaged goods, so I'll just wipe your brain and have to reprogram you. Needs must.
He took a huge swig of whiskey and sighed.
You could have been a god, immortal, everlasting, ruling by my side, but alas...
Just as he was about to finish, Gordon slunk out from his hiding place and withdrew the rolling pin from the belt that he had took from the kitchen, and like a little stealth assassin he leapt, smacking MacDonald at the back of the head, knocking him out cold. Gordon stood over the body of his enemy and was quite shaken up, but soon shook it off and started trying to pull MacDonald towards the console with the hand recognition. He was a hefty weight for our little Gordon to heave alone.
Jeez.
After some pretty monumental efforts and a lot of moaning and groaning, MacDonald's body suddenly became lighter. Gordon thought it must have been the adrenaline, but alas, no. The woman cyborg had stuck her arms through the bars and had nearly single-handedly picked him up. With the combined effort, they managed to awkwardly position MacDonald's hand onto the scanner, and it scanned his palm. The very moment that it had done scanning the palm, they dropped MacDonald to the ground, and he fell in a heap. The useless piece of... sorry, I do get carried away. He fell in a heap on the floor.
As the jail cell door swooshed open, Gordon and the woman stood staring at each other for a moment, and then she leapt forward at Gordon with lightning-like speed and gave him the biggest bear hug that he had ever had.
Whoa, you're super strong. Need to breathe.
Oops, I'm sorry. It's this new body. It is very strong. I haven't quite got used to it yet.
She released her kung fu-style grip on our Gordon, who took in a deep breath.
Right, let's tie him up and we'll take him with us.
What? Why?
Well, the Indian tribe want him to help us get back to our time.
Your time?
Yeah, I'll explain later on the way, but would you help me?
Of course.
So they got to work and used MacDonald's apron to tie his hands together.
Let's drag him out of here. This might be a bit of a problem.
Just as Gordon was about to finish his sentence, the woman easily picked up MacDonald with one arm and climbed the ladder and exited the lab. Gordon, with his mouth wide open, broke from his astonishment and scrambled after her. Getting back into the lobby, Gordon then took the lead. He went back into the kitchen and then remembered the door was bolted shut. Oh, where was the key? The woman stood facing the door and used her free hand to open the lock. Gordon was amazed once more as the woman placed her hand next to the lock, and as if by magic it transformed into a key and smoothly unlocked the door. She pushed the door open, and then the rising sunbeams flooded the kitchen as morning had arrived in the Wild West. Gordon was running out of time, as the guards and maids would soon be awake and they would be rumbled. Across from the door was Ian, Weezer, and Polly, all with wide open mouths as they marvelled at Gordon and the mystery robot woman. As the group stared at each other, MacDonald was beginning to stir, and to remedy this, Gordon clonked him on the head again, rendering him unconscious. Oh, he deserves it anyway. Polly, Ian, and Weezer smiled and held in a belly laugh. The group got together and set off for their horses where they had left them, and all mounted the horses and rode off towards the Indian village. Bill Tates and his gang would be super surprised when they realized their boss had been kidnapped. What a surprise! After a huge journey of 3 days, 3 nights, and whatever or how long, they reached the familiar mountainside where they knew the Indians would be at the top. Gordon cupped his hands around his mouth and made a howling wolf-type noise, to which was received by a lookout at the top of the cliff. Rope ladders were thrown down over the side, and the gang, with MacDonald in tow, started to climb to meet the Indian mystic once more. After a somewhat hectic climb, they reached the top, and the moment they did, there was a noise from below, and yes, you guessed it, it was Bill Tates and a band of cowboys. The Indian warriors were ready and aimed their bows and held them steady, waiting for the signal to fire away. When Bill and his band of miscreants saw the Indians, they fired their guns and rode back into the forest with their tail in between their legs. They were a band of yellow bellies if ever I saw one. The Indians rejoiced and praised Gordon and the gang as they took MacDonald to the center of the village. The entire village had turned out to see the spectacle. Stepping to the front, the mystic ordered the warriors to prepare MacDonald. Gordon stepped forward.
What are you gonna do with him?
We need to punish him. We will see that he will not harm anyone anymore.
Okay.
Kicking and screaming at the top of his voice, MacDonald was dragged to a cage and his mouth bound, quietening his hateful words. Balance had been restored, or so they thought. While they had been chatting, they had let their guards down as Bill Tates and his gang had found an alternative route up the mountainside and rushed into the village with their guns facing the Indians, and they were all stood in a standoff. Bill Tates stepped forward to the front to open up negotiations.
Now listen up here, you have what we want, our boss, and we have what you don't want, a bullet. So my suggestion is hand 'em over and we won't kill y'all.
Why do you want him?
That's no concern of yours, but if you must know, we search for eternal life. It was promised to us, and we have come to collect. Now hand him over, or all of this village will fall.
There was an awkward silence as they simply stood staring at each other. The woman cyborg out of nowhere stepped forward and raised her head at Bill Tate, staring into his eyes.
Now then, my dear, you know not who I am and what I will do to y'all if you do not give me what I want. Bring the boss right here.
Well, now, Gordon had thought the woman cyborg had run out of tricks, but he was wrong. What happened next was simply amazing. She stood. Her brain, which they could all see, began to glow, and her heart plate emanated a red light. Nobody knew what was happening, and as they watched, something spectacularly magnificent took place. Now, to say that this was spectacular and magnificent was an absolute understatement. Now, imagine, if you will, slowing down time, as that's what you'll have to do to comprehend just how fast this took place. Let me paint the picture for you, as the gang of cowboys placed their fingers on their gun triggers. The woman cyborg disintegrated them all with a green beaming laser that if you blinked you would have missed it. You needed to be there really to see and believe it. The laser came out of the emanating chest plate over her heart. The plate opened so quickly and the laser so fast that it was a little hard to believe. I really can't get my head around it myself, but basically 1 minute Bill and his gang were stood right there, and the next minute they were toast. All that was left of each man was a small pile of ash. Everyone, stunned and amazed, gasped and dropped to their knees as they marveled at the cyborg woman.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Whoa, that was sick.
Nice.
After a mini-celebration, they all cheered and thanked the woman for saving them. The Indian mystic then, with a somber face, stepped towards them to make a confession.
My friends, I must apologize to you, as I am afraid that I lied to you.
About what?
About having the ability to send you home. I am afraid you will be stuck here for the foreseeable future.
Oh, what?
You're joking, you promised.
I do not know what else to do. You were and are so powerful. We needed you to help. There was no other way.
The gang looked at each other, and Polly and Gordon started to tear up.
I want my bed.
I want my mum.
Then they looked at Ian and Weezer for answers to which they were speechless. Tears rolled down all of their faces as they went over what they were going to miss from home.
Bed.
Cereal. Ice cream. Car cake.
Chocolate.
Yorkshire. Cinema.
Mum.
Alphonse. Big B. Grandad. Cartoons.
Then, at the same time, they all managed to say,
Cookie.
If you didn't know, Cookie was their little extraordinary Jackson dog. Oh, she was very tiny, very little. I like the word little. Oh, yes. Ho-ho. Now I'm going to say, meanwhile, across the length and breadth of the cosmos, time and space, little Cookie was still snoring her little noisy head off inside Gordon's cave-like quilt. Then a sound reached her little ears, and her inquisitive little nose twitched, and eyes sprang open, looking in all kinds of different directions. She had somehow heard her name and was frantically looking for Gordon and Polly, sniffing here and there, and then something quite bizarre happened. Her eyes, they went into their natural place. Now, this may be normal for some poochers, but Cookie's eyes were always wandering in different directions. She was a special little pup. Oh, anyway, her eyes stood still, which never happened, and she started to stare into space. Then, in front of her, you wouldn't believe it, but a tear in the space-time continuum opened up, and she walked into the realm between realms. You know, the realm in between realms where time and space merge into one, the place where nobody could access, and she, a little Jackson dog, simply waltzed in and walked on through. You know the place, the never-ending place that's tied to all the fabric of the universe. Anyway, she walked in as though she had been there before, and let me just tell you, she had. She often took herself off for little walkies, you know, through the space-time continuum. Even though the family were totally oblivious, she would just take herself on walkies anywhere at any time. Anyway, she waltzed on and started to sniff and looked frantic. She was looking here, looking there, looking everywhere for something. And then she stopped and turned her head to the left, making her signature sound. Another tear in the space-time continuum opened, and yes, you have got it. It was where the guys were, Gordon, the gang. She had gone to find them and bring them home. Oh, bless her little soul. Cookie stood whilst the gang, mouths now wide open, couldn't believe what had materialized in front of them. How absurd, really. I mean, come on, how could a little pup be the master of space and time? I don't know, but anyway. Gordon, Weezer, and Polly bid the Indians goodbye and turned to the cyborg woman.
Do you want to come with us?
Well, thank y'all for the gracious offer, but I think I will stay here with the Indians, as there's a lot of good I can do.
So it was settled, and the group all gave hugs out, high fives, fist bumps, and the like, and waved as they disappeared through the interdimensional gateway. Oh, yes, I think that has quite a nice ring to it, then tear in time. I should have wrote it earlier, but anyway. They walked on into the realm between realms, and it was as if they were on a bridge. There were sides they couldn't go past. They could see other realities and times. As they ventured on further, they made sure to follow little Cookie, and they marveled at what she could do. But whilst they were marveled at Cookie, they noticed something else in the middle. There was a humongous, and I mean humongous, mega huge tree. It was, for lack of a better word, massive, and the leaves were taller than Ian. So he's 6'1". That just puts it into some kind of perspective for you a little bit.
Look up there.
On one of the branches,
there was what looked like a tree man. His size paled in comparison to the monster-sized tree in the centre.
Let's not disturb them. I think we've had enough adventuring for one day.
Deciding to venture on, they all walked behind Little Cookie and through another interdimensional gateway and were standing in Gordon's bedroom. As a huge celebration, they all embraced and gave Little Cookie the biggest cuddle that she had ever had in the entire existence of reality.
Right, let's get a brew on guard.
Oh, yeah, I'm absolutely thirsty.
Me too.
Okay, then.
Gordon filled a little whistling kettle and they all slumped into chairs around the kitchen table. Weezer then dragged herself to the kettle when it started to whistle. She decided that she would make a brew. Polly and Gordon opted for a hot chocolate instead. No sooner had they finished their drinks as they slurped away. Mildred, their mother, then walked through the door.
Right, gang, I couldn't be bothered to make tea, so I've fetched you all some fish, chips, curry sauce, mushy peas, and battered sausage. I love a bit of battered sausage myself.
The gang sprang to their feet with all the energy they could muster and gave Mildred a squishy hug. Mildred wasn't used to this, and her face lit up red with embarrassment.
What's up with you lot? I'm not used to these public displays of affection, but thank you.
They then all tucked into the glorious fish and chips and stuffed their little handsome faces. Oh, they looked like squirrels or hamsters shoving nuts into their too. Oh, after their piggish eating. They were all pooped and decided to retire to their rooms to get some well-deserved shut-eye. Ah, what a day. So was this Gordon's final adventure? Or would you like more? Please like, share, and enjoy. And I'd like to thank you all so much for coming on this journey with us. Have a fantastic day, you beautiful people.